Now, before we finally dive into the JavaScript refresher, or optionally, in case you skipped that, into the Node.js basics, let me dive into two different ways of executing your Node code. One way of executing it, which I briefly mentioned earlier in this module, is the REPL. REPL stands for read, reading user input, eval, evaluating user input, print, outputting a result, and L, loop, for returning and waiting for new input. And the REPL is what you use if you just type node into your terminal. Here I am in the terminal, or on Windows, this would be your command prompt. And there, if you just type node with node installed, you are now in the REPL, which you can identify by the fact that you now don't have that full path and your computer name at the beginning, but just that greater than sign. And there you can execute node commands like console log, 2+2, or also writing, interacting with files. You can import the file system there, just as we did it previously in our file. And then we can use that to write a file synchronously and so on. So that will all work here. And this is, of course, an environment where we don't store our code in files, but we write our Node application with every line. The lines don't work independent from each other, so I can now use the file system package, for example, now that I imported it one line earlier. But once I quit out of this process with Control-C, I'm done. This is not saved anywhere. This is not a file I can execute again, and this therefore is a great playground. The alternative to running codes is that you execute files as we did it before, and as we will basically do it for the rest of this course. This is the alternative to using the REPL. When you execute files, the advantage, of course, is, and that is why we use it for real apps, that we write our code in advance and we can always execute it. And when we build a real app, we want to save our code, of course, in files, which we can then deploy in the end, which we could share with our developers, and where we can also pause our work and pick up later, and where we never lose the code we write. But the REPL is a great playground because we can use it to run some commands, to try out certain things, because we execute code as we write it. And therefore, these are the two ways of running your Node code. Obviously, we'll go with the store code in files approach in this course, but whenever I say REPL, I'm referring to this direct input way, which I can recommend for trying out some features, but not for writing real applications. That is not what you would do. I just wanted to get these two ways out of the way. We'll focus on the left one here. And with that, let's dive into writing some code with the next modules.